Hello, everyone. How's it all going today? How are we all doing? So great to be back with you again. I see Emmy is here, and Carrie, and Kathleen. Anyone else who's watching live already? Let me know in the chat. Let me know if there's any tech issues today. Hopefully we've solved some of those since last week. Krista, great to see you here. And I'm looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts about sight reading today, so let me know about that. Carrie said she's loving the reading railroad exercises, which is awesome. And Kathleen says she loves sight reading. I also love sight reading, but not the way I did it growing up. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. Hey, Rachel, great to see you here. Fantastic. Okay, and Krista, you're just getting ready to use reading railroad. That's awesome as well. Fantastic. Rainy day over in Alabama. It's like we've swapped weathers, Lee. It's a sunny day here in Dublin. Our rain's coming back tomorrow, though, so we won't get too comfortable, but we still enjoy to have it. I planted a whole bunch of stuff in the garden today because I was like, it's not raining, go, and then we'll get back to the rain tomorrow. But yeah, let me know what's going on with you, what's in store for this week, and what you think about sight reading. That's our special topic of today. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about, one of my favorite aspects of teaching, since I realized a particular tweak I could make in the way I thought about it. So that's really what we're unpacking today with the mysterious title of the video. So we're going to go dive in and we're going to do our warm-ups. If you are watching live, make sure to hit the like button for us while you see the intro. That's your little cue, and that just helps the show to reach more people. So here we go. Hello, beautiful teachers, and welcome to the Vibrant Music Teacher Chat on YouTube. This is our weekly show, and it's done live every Monday. So if you're watching this on the replay later, come along live next time if you can make it. The details are all on our channel. And if you do want to just catch all the replays, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so that you get the next one. So this is a show where we talk about everything to do with music teaching, and today we're talking about sight reading in particular. We'll also go through the latest news, and we always do a little warm-up together to get ourselves in the zone for this teaching week. So whether you're watching live or on the replay, let me know in the comments how you're doing, what this warm-up is doing for you, and what you get out of it as we go through, and your thoughts about sight reading. Before we get to the warm-up mode and get into our rhythm railroad and solfège railroad exercises, don't worry if you don't know what that means, we'll reveal all in a second. But before we get there, we are going to choose our snap camera. So we didn't have this last week because there's some tech hiccups, so I'm really looking forward to it. I've picked out two for you to choose between. For those who aren't familiar, this is where we choose a little fun appearance for my face that we're going to use at the end of the show. So this is just our selection, and it's what we're going to use for the Ask Me Anything section. So the more questions you ask during the show with the word question at the start, so that I can come back to it, and they can be about anything. They don't have to be about sight reading. The more you ask during the show, the longer I'll stay on, pretty much. And also the longer I'll have this ridiculous appearance. So we're not too ridiculous today, but I do think this is quite fun. So here are your choices. We've got... No, that's not working. I tested that earlier and it worked. It did that exact thing. And then it worked. So let's see if restarting it helps us out. Okay, hopefully it's going to work now. Right, okay. We're set. Here we go. This is option 1. So if you want this option, you're to type the word cherry, because it's like cherry blossoms come out of my head. Kind of looks like I have antlers made of cherry blossoms, which I think is really funny. So that's the cherry blossom. And then this one is so weird, I had to pick it. I was looking for spraying options, by the way. That was the goal. But this is really strange. So it's a daisy. I get the daisy. But like the petals are mostly dandelions. So they don't go. And what is the green doing? I don't know. Do you want me to look this kind of ridiculous? or this kind of ridiculous. So that's going to be type cherry for this one, or type daisy. I'll also accept dandelion since it's a mixture, or maybe green. You vote for fairy. You think this one's supposed to be a fairy or the other one? They both look kind of like fairies to me. I don't know. Is this the fairy, Angie? I don't know which one is the fairy. Let me know. I love to hear that about the warm-ups, Angie. It's really important to put ourselves in the students' shoes for sure. Cherry, daisy. Emmy says cherry. Okay, daisy. It's 50-50 so far. Daisy is fairy. Okay. Is it? I just don't know what the green is about. But I think it's funny. Like, if I can get some green lipstick, I'll do it. You know, I'll wear a bright coloured lipstick. I don't mind. Oh, we've got way more votes for cherry, though, coming in. I'm afraid you're going to lose, Angie. Okay, so say goodbye to the daisy. This is the one we're going to come back to later. Keep asking your questions throughout the show to keep the cherry blossoms on my head at the end of the show for longer. They can be about absolutely anything. They can be about, literally peanut butter. Like, whatever. Anything goes. And I'll do my best to answer. Okay, with that being said, let's get into our warm-up together. So we always start with a deep breath together. This might seem a little bit hokey, a little bit cheesy, but please just bear with me and go with me, okay? Do it with me. We're going to breathe in as we stretch our arms out wide. So we're breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hands to heart. And we breathe in again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's your deep breath. I hope you feel a little bit more calm. You can see how my voice changes, even though I'm not doing the breath. I'm thinking about it. Not doing the breath because I'm talking, by the way. But I'm thinking about it, and it immediately sort of makes me a little bit calmer in my mode. Okay, so with that in mind, that means we're in the right headspace to go into Rhythm Railroad. Here we go. So this is our first Rhythm Railroad exercise for today. If you haven't done these before, we'll go through the actions. So we've got the yellow for the head, the green for the foot, and the heart is touch your heart or touch your chest, or some students do this, and I don't mind that either, but I tend to go for this one. Okay, so we'll practice it together first, and I'll do Kadai, or my modified version of Kadai syllables for this one. Are you ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Tattoo, tattoo, ta, 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 ta. Tattoo, 3, 4. Tattoo, tattoo. T, 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 ta. T, 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 tattoo. Almost forgot I was going to need my hand again there. Are we ready to try it together? These are so much fun. If you haven't been doing them along with us, like Angie said earlier, these help you realize what it's like to be a student again, right? They're simple, but you have to do them and you're put on the spot, and I'm not giving you much time to prepare. And that's what we do to our students a lot of the time. I'm not saying we push them too far, but we do push them a little bit, and we need to connect ourselves with that. So definitely do them with me. Are you ready? Here we go. There's going to be a intro for 1 bar since it's in 4/4. So it'll be 4 beats in, and then off we go. Oops. Not too bad, right? We did okay. If you totally missed all of them, no worries. I've had a bit of practice doing these, and I'm still very far from perfect. That's a really good thing to demonstrate to your students as well. Okay, so we're going to practice this one next. We have a new symbol here, which is the one hand. That means tap one hand. It can be on your leg, it can be on a table, it can be on a closed piano lid. I just do mine in the air on the show just to show you that I'm doing it, so it doesn't make a sound. But that's what we do. So let's practice it first. I'll count this time. It goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I paused in the middle. I thought I'd flip them. I thought I got it backwards, but I think I got it the right way around. Okay, so let's give it a go. This time there will be 2 bars before it starts since it's in 3/4. I messed up a little bit there, but I think I clawed it back. Okay, next up we're going to do some singing. So this one is very simple. It only uses 3 notes in this level, so we've been taking a more gradual start to this than we did with Rhythm Railroad as a community, as a live show. This level of Solfège Railroad only uses mi, so, and la. That's it. And I know many teachers are a little bit less comfortable with singing, and especially with solfège singing, than rhythm, so that's why I chose to start. We'll just start at the beginning, just like students do, and that way it's super accessible. So I'm going to do the hand signs, in case you want to get used to those. I do them with both hands. You can also do them with one hand, and I do recommend you sing along, even if you don't use the solfège words. Just hum along, sing do, whatever you prefer. Okay, this one has the tonic chord and the starting note, and then the drummer intro. I always want to do that hand gesture at the end of those. So that is our warm-up. I hope you feel more ready for the week ahead and more ready for the show. Let's dive into our news. Excuse me, sorry. In my personal world this week, I feel like it's been one of those bitty weeks where I didn't get a lot done, but I actually did, but it wasn't one big project, so that feels like not a lot to me. But what I did get done is, big news from me and my studio, is I finally found a venue for our recital. That means I'm no longer pursuing the outdoor option, which was going to be really, really difficult, time-consuming and expensive, but I was going to do it if it was all I was left with. So thank goodness I don't have to do that. I do think it would be super fun, and if you live somewhere where that's easier, great. But I'm in a position where, number one, there's a really high likelihood that it'll rain on any day. In May, in June, doesn't matter when. And number two, you have to apply to the council, you have to get very specific insurance, and both of those things take time and money. And then I would also need the equipment because I don't have the correct equipment. There's no power outlet in any outdoor park that I could have done it in. So I'm very happy I don't have to do that, if I'm honest. I would have risen to the occasion, but I found an indoor venue and I went kind of to see it and also to a talk that happened to be there yesterday. So I'm just kind of breathing a sigh of relief, but also half being like, is this one going to fall apart? Because there's literally nowhere else I can get. Like, it's been so difficult this year because the usual venues just don't want to rent to you, basically. So anyway, I'm really happy to have that and looking forward to it being like solid, to filling in a form rather than just having an email agreement with them. I hope if you're planning a recital that it's going smoothly for you and that it was easy to put together for you because it wasn't for me. I've also been doing a lot of interviews, which is why my week has felt so bitty, because we're looking to hire another employee here, a local one, which is why you might not have heard about this. I did mention it a couple of places, but when I'm looking for international people, like remote workers, I always make sure everybody knows in case teachers wanted it as a second job, but this is a local position. So I've been doing lots of interviews for that, which is important, but time consuming. And I've also been doing lots of Turbo Boost bits and pieces. So I want to encourage you that if you haven't got a ticket yet, you can go to teacherturboboost.com to get that. I'm also going to put the direct link into the chat here, and it's in the description as well. So if you want to open that in a new tab right now, you absolutely can. And that way, after the show, or when you get bored of listening to me speak, I won't be offended. You can go check out all the amazing speakers and the whole conference layout. And it is super affordable. I make sure of that. They're not like really expensive events. So that is $69 if you're not a member. And it's only $49 if you're a member of VMT. So it's really affordable. It's a full week of full-on wonderful training in a really unique format. In fact, I'm going to start that one more time. I think if you love this show, you will really love the conference. I know many people that come to this show came to last year's and they loved it because it's like this, but even more and even better, and in a way more focused in some areas, but also in a way more broad because you've got the guest speakers as well. So really looking forward to that event, and I hope you sign up for it because it's going to be a lot of fun. And the more teachers there are there, especially live, the better it will be because we have live participation on Zoom. Anyway, you can get the full details on the page. And that is coming up in April, just so you know. It's April 11th to 15th. And then we also released some great content for you. So we've got our new post today and podcast is about the stubborn duet secret. So it's a really great accompaniment to this show today because it's really about sight reading and the power of duets for teaching sight reading. So I think you'll love that one. Maybe open that or save that for after the show as well. And I had a simple but fun video here on YouTube, which is about using Iwako erasers in lessons. Those cute little Japanese puzzle erasers. You don't have to have a Iwako brand, by the way. You could use Legos, you could use anything. But it's just about ways to use small little toys in your lessons. Really simple ideas to make your lessons more fun, more interactive. And I've had several questions on that video and in other places about the video, about how old students can be for you to use those. And they can be any age. Honestly, I and many other teachers, it's not just me being strange, many teachers I know use little erasers and tools like that with adults. You don't, in fact, let me know in the chat if you do that too. Do you use games with your adult students sometimes, or are you like, no, it stops at age 12? Like, how do you feel about it? Because people have been asking me a lot about these Iwako erasers, and I feel like if you go into it acting like it's embarrassing, yes, the teenagers will think like this is babyish, this is embarrassing. But other than that, I don't think they will. I think if you just present them, like, you don't have to present them being like, oh, isn't this so fun? And like it's some novelty, but it's just a tool you're using, and they're not going to balk at the fact that it's a little kitten or whatever. I mean, why would they? Teenagers like fun things. They might sometimes pretend they don't, but only when they think they're going to appear uncool. So, yeah. I mean, for me, it's all ages, but obviously it's up to each individual teacher to decide what works for them and their students and their community. Like, cultures are different, things are different everywhere, but I say go for it for the most part. So yeah, those were our new content this week. Krista, I'm so glad you got a lot out of last year's Turbo Boost. That's wonderful to hear. We had great feedback about it, and it's really a different style of event to anything else you will have seen. So if you're like, oh, well, I went to some other conference, not that I'm dissing any other conference, but if you feel like you went to another conference lately and so you don't want to do another one, it's not going to be the same as your other conference. It's quite different. Laura, I'm glad we're in the same boat there, for sure. Okay, Lee, that video is on the YouTube channel, so if you just click on the colorful keys where it says colorful keys right below this video, go to the YouTube channel and it'll be one of the newest videos there. It's on our YouTube channel. Oh, it is also on VMT, right? It's in the training library if you prefer to watch it there. Either place. Rachel, I fixed that today, so you can go watch it again. Okay? Or listen to it now. And yes, absolutely, Morgan. The full list is absolutely public. Just go to the link that I shared, or it's also in the description. You'd have to refresh the page to get that. So teacherturboboost.com is where you can go if you want to type it in. And all the speakers are there. They're all added and they're all really, really cool people. I was going to say if I do say so myself, but I'm not taking any credit for that. They're just really cool people. Lee, yes, since that question is relevant to what we just did, I'll answer it now. Yeah, I only count out loud during the practice run unless a student is struggling. And then I absolutely will count out loud during it. But I'll more often, if they're struggling, I'll get a pen or a drumstick or something and point, because I'm looking at a screen with them usually in the lesson. I'll point to help them track. That's normally a better option rather than adding extra audio on top of the audio. But that's my default. And Lee, about the Turbo Boost, yes, there are video replays of the first 2 hours, which is all the sessions with me and guest speakers. What there is not a replay of is the Zoom session, because that is a discussion with other attendees. So that does have to be purely live, but the first 2 hours are available on replay and they're pretty much uploaded straight away. So you can watch them whenever it suits and you have access for a full year to those. Alrighty, gorgeous stuff. So that's all my news. Let's dive in and talk about sight reading. Sight reading is one of those words that I feel like has gotten a bad rap. Don't you think so? Piano sight reading has turned into this thing, much like talking about technique and actually just meaning scales, or talking about technique and actually just meaning Hanon. Sight reading often means something very specific, especially in countries that are heavily exam focused, like Ireland, like many other countries around the world. It's turned into a definition of those little exercises that you do in an exam. And that's not what sight reading means at all. However, I don't think it's always helpful to try and disentangle or take a word back to its origins. So instead of talking about sight reading, I've put a new label on it. Let me tell you where I got this word. So I listened to this podcast called The Creative Pen. And The Creative Pen is a podcast for writers. Nothing to do with you unless you happen to also write and then listen to it. She's fantastic, Joanna Penn, who runs that. But I listen to it because I've written several books and it's good to get publishing advice, etc. And on The Creative Pen, she talks about the difference between two different types of writers. So there are those in the wider writing community, what they tend to be called is plotters and pantsers. So what they mean by that is the plotters are the people who plot out their entire story and they map it all out ahead of time. And the pantsers is referring to flying by the seat of your pants. That's why they're called pantsers. But Joanna Penn, the host of The Creative Pen, she's not such a fan of the term pantsers. And she is a pantser, meaning she's not one who plots her books well in advance and does every detail. So she prefers the term discovery writer for her own style of writing. And I think she's right. Pantser does have this sort of negative connotation, like, oh, you couldn't be bothered planning, so you're just flying by the seat of your pants, when actually it's a story that's unfolding to her. And so I've borrowed it to apply to sight reading. Because instead of talking about sight reading, I think we should be talking about discovery playing. Because when I think about my sight reading, which is one of my favorite things to do now that I'm not in the exam system, that's what I'm doing. I'm discovery playing. So one of my favorite things to do with my own musical skills is not perform for others. Sorry, I'm not a performer. I know some people hear that you're a teacher and not really into performing and they're like, oh my God. But that's not my bag at all. I don't like being the center of attention, at least in that way. Sure, I do a YouTube show or whatever, but I don't want to be up on stage. I do perform at my students' recitals, but that's it. It's not my favorite activity. I'm also not I'm not in a band or anything like that. And I do play a bit by ear, but mostly as a not forced skill, but something I do have to put a bit of effort into so that I become a better teacher for my students. But my natural mode, the thing I love doing, is reading music and discovering what it sounds like. And that's sight reading. Taking out a book that I've never heard before and opening it up and sitting there and playing through it and maybe sipping some wine or some coffee or tea in between songs, in between pieces, and seeing what they all sound like and experimenting with them a little bit. I love that. That's my favorite activity. And calling it sight reading, which I have done in the past, I say sight reading is one of my favorite things to do because it is technically sight reading, but I think it needs a rebrand. So I'm going to call it discovery playing. That's what I love to do. Let me know if you love discovery playing too, or if that sounds like no. I like to sit down and really digest and learn a piece properly. I don't like pieces that I don't know really well, because that's a perfectly valid way to be as well. Just happens to be my favorite way to play. So when we think about this discovery playing and passing it on to our students, we can't just rebrand it. We can't just say, no, it's discovery playing and expect them to love it. Because there are other things that go into making a great sight reader and someone who loves discovery playing. And I think you might be missing a step or two along the way. So let's think about what those steps are. The step one of creating a student who loves sight reading, whether they're a transfer or your own student, do they have a foundational understanding of reading? A solid reading foundation. Because if they do not, they can't be a great sight reader or a discovery playing lover yet. And when I talk about foundational reading skills, I'm talking about 2 or 3 years of study. I'm not talking about the first few months. Sure, for a teen who's like really gung-ho, they might get through that in a few months, and that's fine. But for most students, we're talking about a few years here. We're talking about them getting to the level of they can recognize all the different notes on the staff, and they can also fluently read intervals, and they recognize a few chords and maybe a few left-hand patterns. They need all of that to really go into sight reading or discovery playing mode at all. So that's the first stage. Once they come out of that stage, the second mistake you can make, if you did get them through that stage and you understand the importance of all the lessons along the way there, the next mistake you can make with the path to great sight readers or discovery players is not giving them enough repertoire. And this is one, again, because of our exam system. I don't hate exams, by the way, just hate indoctrination into that mode and just doing that and nothing else. But that's a whole other topic. Because of our exam system and the exam system in many countries, students end up going out of method books and into exams. And then when they start the exams, they basically learn just the exam pieces for a year. I mean, some teachers are good at getting them to do supplemental repertoire. I certainly don't allow my students to learn exam pieces for a year, but I'm the exception. A lot of teachers do this. And it means that they're just not reading enough to be good readers. It's really as simple as that. You can't develop good reading fluency if you don't read enough stuff. I always take it back when I'm talking to parents or other teachers as well. Let's take it back to reading your native language. If you're going to be a great reader of English, what do you need? You need to read a lot of books. That's why schools are always trying, and parents are trying to get their kids into reading. They're trying to find a book that really hooks them in so that they follow through that whole series and read a lot. Because the more you read, the better you get. And the reason that works is once you get back past those beginning stages of reading, you start to absorb the new words even though you haven't met them before because they're surrounded by other things that you do understand. And the same thing happens in piano. If you start to read more and more and more, you'll know most of the bits of the piece, but not others, and you'll figure those out along the way and start to understand them and translate them and relate them to things that you already understand and become more and more fluent because the next time you encounter that word, that pattern in music, it's familiar to you. So the next stage is to make sure that your students are doing enough repertoire. And those are the two basic foundations. They sound simple, and they are simple, but that doesn't mean they're easy. They're just foundational. The next two things I think you need that you might be lacking for great sight readers, really great sight readers, is, first of all, ensemble experiences for your students. If your students are going to be not just pretty good readers, but great sight readers, discovery playing lovers, if they're going to be that, they need to play with other students, to play with other musicians, or at the very least to play with backing tracks, metronomes, drumming tracks. And I don't really count metronomes enough, so I would say drumming tracks at a minimum. But really, they need to play with others. Now, it can be you, right? If there's no way for you to sort out experiences for your students to play together, fair enough. If you can't do that, that's fine. Definitely encourage them that if they have friends who play, that give them options that you think they might be able to play together, but at least play with you and them. Because the reason that is so important to sight reading is it keeps the train moving. If you keep the train moving. So if you're going to play with them, don't pander to them. Don't make it easy. Don't be kind. I was saying this to a teacher who works here the other day. Don't feel like you're being kind by slowing down or helping them when they pause at a bar line. You're not being kind. What's kind is to prepare them for it. So before you start, you say to them, okay, this train is not going to stop moving. Do your best to climb back on. Don't worry if you can't. Just listen to me until the end and then we'll start again. So that they learn the momentum. And that's what you need for really great reading. You need the rhythm. You need the momentum. You need the tempo to stay solid. Much more, as we know, then you need the right notes. The final layer for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments, final layer for me is about validating other areas. What am I talking about? Well, we can get so hyper-focused on reading as teachers, and it's partially because it's hard. I'm not saying playing by ear is not hard. I'm just saying there's so much to reading and there's so much tradition behind teaching reading that sometimes we get stuck in that mode and we don't validate students wanting to learn other things. So if your student loves playing by ear, if they learning off YouTube tutorials, don't act as if reading is far superior to any of those things. Because all you're doing then is backing them into a corner. If they believe in their core that they love playing that way, whatever way it is, from lead sheets, by ear, from YouTube tutorials, by rote. If they love playing that way, and you act as if reading is the one and only, or at least the best, by far, then you're backing them into a corner. It's like any argument, and I won't get political, but imagine a political argument that you're having with someone, and you think you're in the right. The more you insist that they're an idiot for thinking what they think, the more they're going to be defensive against you, because you would do the same thing. That's just human nature. And it's human nature just as much for teenagers and kids as it is for adults. So don't put them in that position. Also, don't put them in that position because it's not true, right? Reading is not better, but we end up implying it sometimes, even though we don't think it. So just be careful around your prioritization and how you talk about reading versus the other skills that you're teaching, so that you don't back students into that corner where they end up saying, I quit, or I'm just not going to practice the reading at home and I'll show up and not be prepared with it every week and just be stubborn about it because my teacher is acting like my music doesn't count. My pop music, my YouTube learned things. And I'm not saying like the YouTube learned things are always the best possible quality. I'm just saying that they're valid. They're a valid way to make music. We might look at them and say, oh my God, how long did that take you? Because have you tried to learn off one of them? Oh my God, so long. It's excruciating. If you already know how to read music and you're just thinking, just give me the sheet music. Like I can just read this. And it'll be so much easier. But their reading is not up to that standard yet, and maybe they just enjoy learning that way, and that's fine. And maybe it also opens up repertoire options that they don't have in their reading work with you because you can't access the sheet music for those things, or it's, you know, not copyright appropriate, which is totally fair, or it's just not good in an arrangement for piano, but they still want to do it somehow. So it's not just about YouTube versus reading. I'm just giving that as an example. Be careful about backing students into a corner, right? So let's go over those 4 sort of stages of understanding how to create great sight readers or discovery players in your studio. First of all, don't undervalue the first 2 to 3 years of teaching reading properly. And if you have a transfer student, that probably, if they didn't have a great teacher before, that kind of counts for their first 2 to 3 years with you. You're going to have to lay those foundations. Don't expect them to sight read well. Next, you need to make sure, as they graduate from that stage, that they still have enough repertoire, that they're still learning enough pieces per year. And that means learning a variety of repertoire at different levels, not always the challenge pieces all the time. Number 3 is to make sure they have ensemble experiences, that they're playing with other musicians, even if it's just you, even if it's just a drumming track, do your best to create that experience. And then number 4 is to make sure to validate other areas of music so that they don't feel like you think reading is the only important thing in the world, because that'll just back them into a corner and make them turn against it in many cases. So those are my thoughts on discovery playing, sight reading, and teaching reading skills in general. I'd love to hear yours in the comments. And let's dive in to our book club. Let me know if you're reading along. So we are on this book at the moment. It's called Teaching Piano to Students with Special Needs. I'll hold it up again for the author. It's Mary Ann Froelich. And we're on chapter 6. So we're reading, next week we're reading the final chapter, chapter 7, and the final thoughts at the end, like the closing remarks, I think it says, at the end. So we're almost at the end, but that doesn't mean you can't catch up or read it after us and then look back over our previous YouTube chats here, because then you'll see my thoughts as we go through, or read through my comments, which are in the member forums if you're a VMT member. And if you're not a member, that's where you sign up, and you'll get much more than just my thoughts on this one particular book, but that's one aspect of the membership, is the forums. So this week was chapter 6, and I'd love to hear if you read it. I loved it. It opens with some thoughts about training versus education, which I thought was really interesting, and it's not something she unpacked a huge amount. It was just kind of a passing remark, really, but it's something I think I'm going to be chewing on for a while. What is the difference between training and education, and how does that apply to our teaching? But she goes on then to discuss the various steps or stages. She calls them steps. I kind of think they're stages of learning in a way that she goes through with her students, and it's I mean, especially if you're new to teaching students with special needs or new to teaching in general, I think it provides a great framework to follow. Just to say, we move from this to this to this. For example, she starts by talking about compassion and patience, and then developing a great relationship with students and having fun with them in the beginning, which you'll know I'm a fan of, so that they're on your side almost. Because, as she said, if the student doesn't like coming to lessons with you, you've got nowhere to go anyway. So, and that's true for every student, as many of the thoughts in this book are. So, yeah, it's wonderful to read her thoughts on that, and each step along the way is really valuable. And then finally, she talks about success and her definition of success, which is about students finding joy in playing the piano. And I think that's a great definition of success for many of us. And it actually got me thinking about our teaching. Don't you think that's a great way to define your own success, to get you out of the rat race of more students, more teachers you're hiring for your studio, or, I don't know, higher rates, whatever it is you're chasing at the moment? Could you take it back, scale it back, and say, my definition of success is that I have joy in my lessons. I find joy in teaching piano. And that is going to mean that you make enough money from it and that you have the right amount of students and all of the other things. But if we define success in that term, this isn't something she talked about, by the way, it's just where my thoughts went. I think it would change a lot of our perspectives on what we're doing and our aspirations and our day-to-day operations. So that's just my thought that's spawned off that. If you want to read the book, I highly suggest you do. This is one I've really enjoyed. It has some great thoughts in it. It's available on most ebook stores. I don't believe you can get it in hard copy. So that's just one note. And we'll be reading chapter 7 this week. Rachel, like the line, educators draw out hidden skills and talents which lie dormant. Yes. And I loved her discussion of how we used to, like the old paradigm is to say, okay, who's talented, and then pour more resources into them. And maybe in some areas we haven't moved on from that. So she's absolutely right. The people who need the resources are not the ones with the most talent. I'm not saying they shouldn't get anything, but she's absolutely right that is bonkers to say that we only give extra resources to those who are already good. It's just mad, isn't it, when we simplify it like that? Okay, so that's our book club. We'll go into the Ask Me Anything session, and I will put on my cherry blossom horns. Here we go. Okay, got the cherry blossoms. They're ready. And I've seen a lot of chat coming through that I wasn't able to follow, so I want to go back and make sure I've caught up on everything. Because I know some of them didn't have questions at the start, the word question at the start. If you have a question right now, though, please type the word question followed by your question, and I will answer it no matter what the topic is, or I will do my best to answer it. If it's outside of my expertise, I will pass it along. Krista, I missed that. That's wonderful to hear that your teenagers love the games as well. Mine do too. Okay, Rachel, do you have a favorite go-to book or resource for developing lead sheet reading in a good sequence to save me reinventing the wheel? Excuse me. Yes, Rachel. 2 recommendations for you. So if you're a member of VMT, vibrantmusicteaching.com, then we have a whole course. We actually have 2 courses. We have Lead Sheet Kickoff, followed by Lead Sheet Level Up. So Kickoff is the basics, and that will get your student up and running, and you can actually do the course several times in a row until they're really confident, and then you can go to Lead Sheet Level Up and take everything to the next level. If you really want a book rather than a course, or you just want another perspective, I would highly suggest checking out Forrest Kinney's materials. Forrest Kinney was just an incredible person and amazing pedagogue and supporter of creative teaching, and it's at forrestkinney.com. And again, if you are a member, get the discount, because I've just added that to the discounts page for his resources. They're already incredible value. So that's Forrest Kinney. and his resource on lead sheets and arranging is called Puzzle Play. So that's the series, Puzzle Play. Hope that helps. Oh, Teresa, thank you. So 1 vote for the lead sheet course. Both great options, whichever suits you, of course. Yeah, you know what? I probably used to struggle with it. Now I'm pretty okay with it. It's not my bag. I'm not saying I can't play in public, but it's not my favorite thing to do. And sometimes we just need to know ourselves. Sometimes you need to push yourself if it's like a fear that's getting in your way and you would really like to do it and like to be good at it or comfortable with it. That's different. It's just not my favorite thing. Like, it's not what I want to do. Glad you like that for your framing, Morgan. That's awesome. Question from Angie. I have 37 students age 6 to 40. Nice and precise. For the in-person recital, do you see any problem with ordering the pieces played according to difficulty, even if the adults are throughout and one at the end? That is a great question, Angie, and not just because of the adults. I don't like ordering by difficulty. I have 2 reasons I don't like it. Number 1 is the age issue that you're talking about. So even if you have kids, right, you certainly can preface it and like encourage them that like we can get started at any age and it doesn't matter. But I still think it sets it up as like the seats in the class thing. I don't know if any of you had a teacher that did this. It's quite old-fashioned, and I'm not that old, but one of my teachers actually did do this, where you take a class test once a month or something, and then you get placed in order of the test result you got. Anyone had that experience? We had that in one of my classes, and it was science. Unfortunately, that was a good class for me most of the time, so I was usually towards the back of the class because that's the way he ordered it. But like the same few students were always in the front row, front left of the teacher. And like, why? So I'm not saying you're doing anything like that. I'm just saying it has a bit of that feeling to me of like good to bad. Or sorry, bad to good. But the other reason I don't like it is because it doesn't make for a great listening experience for the audience. I don't want to hear 10 beginner pieces in a row and then a bunch of advanced pieces saved for the end. I would prefer to listen to a mixture as an audience member. I don't know about you, but that's just my preference. So I have always gone for mixing it up and for separating siblings. You didn't ask about that, but that's another one of the things I always try to do in recitals. So I won't put any siblings next door to each other in the program, just to avoid a comparison. Also because like the parent, even without the comparisonitis issue, which is just me being the youngest of 5 and extra sensitive to that issue, but even without that, you consider like little Johnny goes up and plays and then he comes back to his parents and the parents want to take a second to go, oh my gosh, Johnny, that was amazing. And if they also have Amy on the other side and she's straight away up there, they don't have that second to like whisper, congratulate him. So that's another reason why I separate them. But yeah, I like a mixture. So I usually open with someone at any level who I know is pretty blasé about a performance, like just isn't bothered by a performance. I open with them and I close often with one of my more advanced students, or again, someone who I think is going to be pretty confident in that spot. And then everything else in the middle is mixture. As much as possible, I go back and forth between like beginner, more intermediate, advanced, beginner, etc. Rachel, beside Landmark Lane, what other activities are there in VMT for reinforcing landmark knows? Oh my gosh, we have so many landmark games. So many. What I suggest you do, Rachel, is go to the library. So go to the printable library and just select beginner and note names. And you'll see so many landmark options, honestly. There's also a list for this. So if you go to the public lesson lists, which you'll find in the big menu, public lesson lists, and go, there's a landmark one in there. So if you just search for landmark, I think I put it together. I think there's also one from another member who made it public, which is wonderful. And so you'll find a lot of the games there, but there's a lot of different stuff there. Also, look up videos of me using the floor staff, because that's actually my favorite way to first introduce landmarks and to reinforce them in the beginning as well. Angie, another question about recitals. Do you play duets with students? Yes. Does this take away from their own perception of performance? No, I don't find it does. Do you play any pieces on your own? So I either play a piece on my own or with the other teachers here at the start. So I've taken to, at the end of year concert, which is our big one where mostly it's all the students together. Everyone who's playing, I mean, not all my students, but everyone who's playing, as in one big concert. So for that, what I love to do, and what I'll be doing again this year, is we'll be playing a trio. We haven't been able to do that for the past couple of years. We've been doing separate performances because I've been videos and distancing and etc. But we're going to do a trio, and I'm just so excited about it. And they are as well. They one, both of them really, but one in particular, the two teachers who work here, her face just lit up like, oh my gosh, we get to do a trio, because there's not that many opportunities for us to play together. Not just us three, but like in general, teachers don't get to play with other performers all the time. So I love to do that. It also means it takes up less time and doesn't look like any one of us is more important than the others. I don't like to be the only one to perform. And if I had all three of us do something at the start, it just feels a bit long. So yeah, we do a trio. But in the other ones, we just alternate because they're like mini concerts with a few students in each one. So like we had 6 in December. And we each did 2 pieces and just did one at the start of each. So that's the way we handled that. And the duets, no, it doesn't detract at all. I pretty much have every new student, beginner student, play duets for their first concert. Unless they're just really confident about it and they have a big epic piece that they want to do that sounds great, like a rope piece that sounds fab. That's fine. But most of the time, a beginner will do a duet for their first concert. And for any after that, it's mostly up to the student. I ask them, would you like to play, like once they've played both versions of the piece they're doing, would you like to play it with me or on your own? And it's about 50-50 in which they prefer to choose. So definitely doesn't feel like less of a performance to them. Yes, Karen, I so agree with that, for sure. They're spending time, their free time, learning something, even if it's not the thing you assigned and they're a bit behind on that, they're still spending time doing it, and I love that. Anna, great thoughts there. I know personally I loved when teachers played at recitals. My piano teacher accompanied me at violin recitals, yeah. And it's a great thing for other instrumentalists that and voice students as well, that they usually play with an accompanist, with a collaborative pianist, if we want to call them that. And we don't often get that as pianists, so it's great to provide that, I think. Okay, let me see if I'm all caught up. Okay, I've got another couple of questions here and then we'll wrap it up. Lee, when in the recital is the best place to put the piece I play? So I like the start. The basic options tend to be start or end. That's what most teachers go for. There's nothing to say you can't play in the middle, but maybe it feels a bit odd. So I like the start. I don't like the end because, again, I'm not a performance person, and that feels like I'm the headline act, and I do not want to be the headline act. I want the students to be. And so I'm going to showcase like one of my fabulous students at the end, and we finish on that high note, and that's awesome. So I like to do the very start, and parents who've been in the studio for a while probably get sick of me saying it, but I always say we always make sure no student has to be the first student to go, because no one wants to do that, so we volunteer to go first. So that's the way I introduce it. Another great option, especially for those of you who are a bit more nervous about performance and don't have the option of playing a duet or a trio like me, although you could do one with a student. I think that'd be fun, like a more advanced student. Do a big showcase duet or trio and give them a second opportunity to play. But Jennifer Fox, and I know others, play as like the entrance music. So someone else does the meet and greets at the door. You know, if you have a spouse or a friend or a older student that's going to help you at the recital or anything, they do the meet and greets at the door and seat everyone, and you're playing as like the intro music while people are chatting and coming in. And I think that's great. It's a great lower key way to do it, but still be seen to play at the recital. No, you didn't. Let me go back and find it. It's been a lively question session. Carrie, are there oral ear training exercises similar to the reading rhythm railroad exercises? If not, do you have plans to create them? So, I didn't answer that. I did see it earlier. That is what the Solfège railroad exercises are to me, and I know that won't be everyone's favourite answer. We do have plenty of oral activities that are not Solfège based. However, if you push me on it, I think that's the best way to teach ear skills. I really do. I think Solfège is the best tool we have in our toolkit, and so I would encourage you to do Solfège railroad. To do it without that, to do a railroad series that it's not using Solfège, I can't honestly see a good way to do that would provide great progression, a good framework, and be accessible to everyone. So I like the Solfège option. Now, where it gets difficult is if you use fixed do Solfège, like if you're in France, or if you just use that French, or, I mean, it's lots of countries, sorry, I don't mean to attribute it to France, but that system of instead of saying C, D, E, you say do, re, mi, then it does become tricky. And that's where I would say, okay, take the Solfège railroad and sing it in numbers or something like that, where again, it's moving. So if you hate Solfège for some reason, or you just can't use it because it clashes, because you use fixed do Solfège, then use that series, but do it either just with do, as I suggested when we were singing, or with numbers. I think numbers are essentially the same as Solfège, just a bit more awkward. That's all. And can get confused later when you're talking about Roman numeral analysis and stuff. But if that's not a concern, that's fine. The reason that's confusing is because we move the Roman numerals to in the minor, but for Solfège singing, the minor starts on La because it is based on the intervals. But anyway, that's a nuance for another day. Hopefully that helps with that. And if you see some scope for some other railroad series that I'm not seeing, please email me, let me know. I'd love to hear from you, or write in the forums so other members can chime in. Either one of those would be great. Okay. Yeah, Kathleen, exactly. Warming up the piano. That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there, folks. Thank you for joining me. It's been a wonderful session. Without any tech hiccups, really. Apart from the snap camera at the start, so that's amazing after last week. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join me next week. We're going to be talking about 10 easy music interval games. So these are going to be things you can do without printing stuff from the VMT library. They're literally going to be on the spot interval games that you can pull out of your bag of tricks at a moment's notice. So I hope you'll join me back here again for that one. And in the meantime, I hope you have a fabulous week.